Hello, friends.
Welcome to the Liberation Chronicles. I'm Robin Parker.
And I'm Jorge Zeballos. This is another episode of the Liberation Chronicles, a series in which we hope to give voice to liberation in our current historical context and discuss what it means to build a truly inclusive society.
This is a special episode of the Liberation Chronicles called Vigil for Democracy. We've gathered friends and colleagues to have a candle lighting ritual that speaks to how we grieve about and how we have hope for democracy in the United States. When shared in community, grieving and lifting up hope can be powerful and healing. We're happy to have you, our audience members, to join us.
I want to briefly introduce our guests to this special episode. First is Beth Applegate, founder of Applegate Consulting Group. Abby Ferber, professor of sociology and chair of women's and ethnic studies at the University of Colorado at Colorado Springs. Dale Hampton, retired. Melanie Morrison, racial justice educator, speaker, and author. Roberto Schiraldi, semi-retired trauma therapist and anti-racist activist. Pamela Sims Jones, program manager, Mercer Street Friends Food Bank in Ewing, New Jersey. Joyce Trotman-Jordan, retired school educator with a strong background in multicultural counseling. And Sylvia Zapata, executive director at Student Action with Farm Workers. To begin the ritual, I'll ask all the participants to light their candles, please. Robin, would you please begin the ceremony by answering this question? Regarding our democracy, what do you grieve in this moment and why do you grieve it?
I hold up this candle in a vigil for democracy in the United States. While I grieve so many things about our democracy, one of the things that troubles me the most is our inability to agree upon facts, the stripping away of truth, even in areas of science and statistics where reasonable people should agree. I believe that when there are no truths, or when truth is replaced by the spin that is most advantageous to a personal or political agenda, then it becomes increasingly difficult for people to trust the government and ultimately to trust one another. I grieve that many people, both inside and outside of politics, act as if they could never be wrong. Without a willingness to be fallible, there can be no dialogue. And without dialogue, I fear democracy will fail.
Beth, would you go next, please?
I hold up this candle in a vigil for democracy in the United States. I grieve in this moment many things. One that comes to mind is a woman that has worked in reproductive health and reproductive freedom for the last 40 years. I am deeply saddened to see where we are in terms of women's autonomy, to manage our own bodies. I'm concerned about how this impacts our ability to be in the economic sector. And without women in the economics sector, I fear that democracy is not as strong as it could be.
Thank you, Beth. Abby, would you go next, please?
I hold up this candle in a vigil for democracy in the United States. Right now, I'm grieving the whittling away of the many accomplishments of the social justice movements, civil rights movement, women's movement, LGBTQ plus movement, and others that have made so many accomplishments in the realm of higher education, which is where I am located right now. I see the damage that is being done each day in the faces of the faculty I work with and the students in my classrooms, and in seeing the classrooms that are half empty these days. I started graduate school in the late 80s, and I remember the joy and exhilaration of taking my first women's studies class and hearing, reading women authors that I didn't know existed and learning about women's history that I had never heard about before. And then, continuing with class after class, taking a class on women of color and their history, and just discovering so much that I had never learned before. And then seeing my own students share that same kind of experience, and feeling right now that students are risking losing that opportunity. And all of the successes that people have fought for over decades, the establishment of multicultural centers, departments like women's studies and gender and sexuality studies, race and ethnic studies, specific scholarships, specific classes, all of those things that people have fought for decades, devoted their lives to, seeing them disappear in a matter of months, and seeing it reach the point where people are now surveilling themselves so that people aren't taking the courses because they don't know what it'll be like. They're afraid of having it show up on their transcripts. Faculty wondering what's going to happen if they keep teaching courses with titles like gender and sexuality. And other faculty, I have the privilege of being a white, cisgender, tenured faculty member who can be on a podcast like this and who can teach those courses and don't have the same kind of fear of losing my job, but fearing for my other faculty who don't have that privilege that they can't do so. So I'm also grieving that so many of these accomplishments have been so recent, and we have not fully attained equity in higher education, still seeing that there was so much ground yet to be made, and now seeing these attacks come just as we were really starting to make a difference is really particularly disturbing and heartbreaking.
Thank you, Abby. Dale, would you go next, please?
Not sure what this means. My candle keeps going out, so I think that's foreboding. But I hold up this candle in a vigil for democracy in the United States. And as to what I'm grieving in this moment, I'm going to end up pretty much paraphrasing Abby here. I was born in 1960, and it seemed like my entire early childhood, early adolescence, later adolescence, it seemed like the arrow of time had been completely intertwined with improved social justice and improvements in civil rights. And certainly we never got to the point where everything was as well as it should be. But I'm now wondering if that was just a moment. I'm grieving the fact that maybe this was not a permanent movement, and things will go back to the way I read in history books and felt, and the evil that I felt at different parts of my life when I would see such horrible injustice being done. And now it's just cavalier. It seems like you can use slurs. You can. There are no taboos and awful behavior. We've slid so far. I'm grieving that we may have slid too far. And I don't know if we're coming back to it, particularly when I look at the world stage. This is not something unique to the United States. I mean, we're seeing these totalitarian regimes popping up all over the world, and strong men getting more and more power. And I'm just hoping we get a few strong women that can turn that around. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dale. Melanie, would you go next, please?
I hold up this candle in a vigil for democracy in the United States. As I prepared for this vigil, I became acutely aware how profoundly intertwined my rage and my grief are. I grieve the kidnapping of immigrants and asylum seekers, the violent rupturing of families once again, and of communities, of neighborhoods, the fear, trauma, and violence so many are experiencing. I lie awake at night, grieving the disappearance of mothers, fathers, grandparents, siblings, aunts, uncles, who are being sent to terrorizing places like CICAT in El Salvador. And I'm grieving these gross injustices in part because I worship every Sunday at La Mesa, a bilingual, multicultural faith community in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And I hear every Sunday there is space opened in that worship, 20 minutes of space for storytelling, for hearing and listening to each other deeply. And I hear raw, personal, vulnerable, firsthand accounts, deeply personal stories and testimonies of beloved people in this faith community who have journeyed here at great risk from Venezuela, Mexico, Cuba, Haiti, Colombia, and other countries. I grieve the unconscionable war that has been declared on these precious human beings. And I also grieve the white supremacist and Christian nationalist assault on museums, historical sites, national parks, K through 12 curricula, higher education. I grieve the attempt to reinstitute the lost cause narrative about this country's history by seeking to scrub websites and take down signs in national parks and in exhibits and memorials, to erase any description of the history of racism, of sexism, and other systems of oppression, and that tell the truth about our nation's history. And the reason this grief weighs so heavily on my heart today is because for the past 6 years, I've been working intensively with students, faculty, and community members in Montevallo, Alabama, south of Birmingham, a small town where I have ancestral roots. And we've been working diligently to unearth suppressed histories and stories, to tell a fuller, truer narrative about the legacies of slavery and indigenous dispossession in that town. And I have experienced how hungry and eager students are for that truth-telling, for difficult conversations. They want them. I do not want them robbed. I want no student robbed of that experience.
Thank you, Melanie. Roberto, will you go next, please?
I hold up this candle in a vigil for democracy in the United States. A lot of what you said, Melanie. The rage of all the bullshit. I want you to have to censor my language, so. For me, it's an oxymoron, democracy, for the most part, because I don't think we really have had one. It's been a lot of baloney. It's been based on lies since Jump Street. And if we don't speak truth, then we have baloney. We have poison, which is what we've had since Jump Street, only now it's just much more obvious. Little boys. The atrocities in this world are perpetrated by little boys in big man uniforms. Thus the disease of machoism. Still not calling it out the way it needs to be by the basically white heterosexual males with all the quote power who running the show since Jump Street. If it was ever not clear, all we don't need to do is look at what's going on. So to me, it's not real complicated. So it'll be interesting to see what we come up with around hope. Because right now, I'm in my 80th year now. I don't have a whole lot of hope for a significant change in my lifetime. But there's always hope. And each of us is here today. So I grieve all the folks who've been suffering, who will continue to suffer. Real hard to have hope when I feel all that inside me. And yet, again, we're here today, each of us. So that's for the next question. So I grieve for the loss of safety, grieve for the loss of speaking truth. That's what I got.
Thank you, Roberto. Pam, would you go next, please?
I hold up this candle in a vigil for democracy in the United States. I grieve for the lies, discrimination, and oppression in this country that is scary and a setback in the journey of social, economic, and political justice. Our ancestors are turning over in their grave and they're crying. It's frightening and it's heartbreaking, and it should give us all pause. But my faith is helping me not to let this grief diminish my quality of life or diminish my want to do good and to fight on. We can't let this grief deter us from doing the good work and get into good trouble. Even though I'm grieving all of the injustices that are being done, we still have to live our lives and do what we can where we are with what we have. And so let's just continue to do the good work and get into good trouble. Even during those days when we feel like the grief is overtaking us, we cannot let it diminish who we are and what we're doing.
Thank you, Pam. Joyce, would you go next, please?
I hold up this candle in a vigil for democracy in the United States. I grieve the almost progress that we've made during the 1960s, the loss. Our ancestors have worked so very hard, like Pam said, and for progress. And that is being dismantled before our eyes. My heart hurts often. Today, I don't know if it was this meeting I was preparing for, but I was teary-eyed the whole day. And I walked into my physical therapist's office, and the receptionist got out of her seat to give me a hug. But that'll be in our next segment. I grieve, the people, the families, the rights that we're losing. Women no longer have autonomy over their own bodies. Our country is going backwards. I grieve the loss of the American dream. We were all supposed to be able to make it. And yet somehow that fire has gone out. I grieve for the children who are afraid to go to school. Thank you, Abby. I grieve for the parents who are afraid to let their children go to school. I grieve for the workers who can't go to work because they're afraid that they'll be picked up. So it's that loss of security and hopefulness that I grieve the most. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Sylvia, would you go next, please?
Yes. I hold up this candle in a vigil for democracy in the United States. In this moment, I grieve for the loss of faith and justice. True, this loss of faith has been in the precedented repression and violence. Precedented repression and violence visited upon the scapegoat du jour of the era. Violence that has not only been physical, but emotional, psychological, environmental, and spiritual. Violence that recently decided to take funding away from migrant farm worker youth who are stepping into higher education for the first generation and their families through the federally funded College Assistant Migrant Program. Violence that is taking away access to health care via Medicaid in North Carolina. A money grab to the tune of $405 million being withdrawn from the Medicaid contingency budget that has been moved to the North Carolina General Assembly general operating budget instead, to do as they wish. Violence that traumatizes families and incarcerated immigrants and zaps the air out of every moment of our joy our community experiences. Repression that is cutting down the clock of leaving any vestige of a salvageable earth for our children. Repression that doesn't sleep at night or day, trying to find ways to corner us like rats in a maze, and rejoices at our cries for help. I grieve for the future sold to our generation of millennials, where higher education plus hard work would equal a comfortable life, and who have instead been crushed by the unnecessary burden of student debt and a middle-class lifestyle that is a mirage. I grieve for those who are being attacked on all fronts and must carry on through each day in spite of it and still have to answer, "I'm good," when asked on how we're doing. I grieve for the relentlessness of this fight for marginalized and BIPOC folks. Our entire history in this continent has been an endless struggle against annihilation and subjugation since white supremacy stepped foot on our shores. I grieve for young men and boys who fall prey to the siren song of misogyny and white supremacy due to bitter despair from lack of connection or emotional intelligence. I grieve for the families who don't know where their children or loved ones are, and those who do know where they are, and who know the kind of suffering that they are enduring at the hands of a government that rejoices in their torture.
Thank you, Sylvia. I hold up this candle in a vigil for democracy in the United States. I want to start by thanking you, Melanie, for naming both grief and rage, because I feel the same way, that they're both present for me. They actually kind of go hand in hand. So my grief/rage at this moment comes from witnessing the most violent attack in our sense of common humanity that we had been able to build over time. And that is so much of the foundation of the work of most of us, or all of us here in this call and many other folks that we know. Our work has been to rebuild the fabric of humanity so we have a sense of each other that makes us feel like we have something in common, something to connect us, that will then lead for us not to dehumanize each other. And yet that very fabric that we're building and we have built over time has been now torn apart. in the most violent, the most disgusting way, specifically, I think, with the intent of creating more division. So in the midst of the division, they can continue to assert their desire for greed and power and money. I also grieve and have a sense of rage about the lack of leadership in some of our institutions, that I would have hoped that in a moment like this, they would have recognized what is needed from them as leaders and from their institutions. And yet, those individuals and those institutions have decided to collude with the current administration. So, it is extremely disappointing to watch that, but not just disappointing, but actually very disheartening. Almost leading to a sense of despair, because if we can't count on some of these individuals and some of these institutions to stand up against tyranny, against oppression, then I'm not sure that we have much hope for coming out of this moment. And that's kind of where I'm at.
Thank you, Jorge. We now turn to our second and final question for the Vigil. Regarding our democracy, what gives you hope, and why do you have that hope? I'm going to begin first. I hold up this candle as a sign of hope for democracy in the United States. I hope that people in the United States will be resilient in charting a course for our democracy, that we will not abandon principles of liberty, freedom, and equality because of the easy attractions of prejudice and bigotry. I have hope because I must have hope. Without hope, I'm left only with anger and desperation. With hope, I have compassion, even for people with whom I strongly disagree. That's who I want to be, and that's what I want to offer to others with whom I strongly disagree. Join me in compassion. And finally, I have hope because my ancestors had hope. Through the most difficult times, through slavery, through the worst of oppression, they kept their eye on the prize. In part, I remain hopeful for them. And so with that, Beth, would you please go next?
I'd be happy to, thank you. I hold up this candle as a sign of hope for democracy in this United States. I believe that hope is love for the future. As my late father used to say always, hope springs eternal. I am hopeful for people like ourselves who've come together this evening to talk both about what we grieve and the rage we feel, as well as what we're hopeful for. As a longtime organizer, I'm hopeful for the grassroots. I'm hopeful for being, as June Jordan said, we're the people we've got to believe in, right? If not us, who? And I'm hopeful that we're here this evening. I'm hopeful that there are many, many others who would like to be here with us, who are with us. I'm hopeful by the No Kings marches and rallies that are springing up all over the country. And I'm hopeful that we, the people, still have our voice and will continue to use it to preserve democracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Abby, would you please go next?
Thank you. I hold up this candle as a sign of hope for democracy in the United States. I have hope because these are not new battles. I've learned that progress is never linear. Things don't just get better. Things are never won once and for all, but always must be fought and refought, on and on and on. And we've been fighting for them for our entire history, and I believe we will always have to. So we really have no choice. And like you, Robin, I have hope because I owe it to my ancestors whose lives were cut short by fascism. And I know that I am their hope for the future. I'm my grandparents' hope. And so I have to have hope.
Thank you, Abby. Dale, would you go next, please?
Hold up this candle again. Keeps going out, which I think is kind of typical for the way I'm feeling right now. As a sign of hope for democracy here in the United States. I had to look pretty deep today to find hope. I was realizing this, it can wax and wane. I hear certain things. I'll read certain scientific journals. I'll read certain things and start to give me hopes in different ways. But then I'm just slammed over the head over and over and over with stuff that kind of like defeats my hope. So I came to some very simple hopes. I have hope because I feel love. I can look into the eyes of families of men that I know, and it makes a difference for me. It makes my day feel like I'm whole again. I feel hope when I'm walking my dog and we're out in the beautiful air like this, and he's bouncing around and he's happy he can be. And he was a terribly abused dog, and he is just joy on legs. He's a husky, and you would never know that he was treated so badly. I feel hope that there's people like me that would go drive to North Carolina to pick up an abused dog that was only 30-some pounds without knowing what was going to happen to him in his life. I feel hope when I get up in the morning and work in my container garden. I love to garden, and here on the island, there's no dirt. That's just granite behind me with like that much soil. So I have all these pots over there filled with vegetables and flowers, and that helps me feel hope because I'm able to contribute to my own nutrition, my own health, and joy and beauty. It's wonderful if you're driving by in a boat and look up and can see my flowers. I'm hopeful when I look in the eyes of my great nephew, who is a bright little 10-year-old. He knows there's a lot of things wrong, and yet he still has a faith that he's going to grow up in a world that's better. And he can articulate a lot of things. I mean, his dad's, my nephew is a principal, and his mom, my niece-in-law, is a elementary school teacher. So he's growing up learning things that he needs to learn, and it's not overwhelming for him. So I have hope that children can be taught the realities of things, and maybe facts can come swinging back around where they're believed to be facts. I have hope when I can feel a warm rain on my skin walking through the woods. And I think I feel hope when I'm eating something delicious I made an amazing lasagna yesterday, and it came out great. And I got to have a leftover piece tonight before this started, and that gave me some hope and joy in my day. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dale. Melanie, would you go next, please?
I hold up this candle as a sign of hope for democracy in these United States. I am drawing heart, hope, and strength from tonight. I'm drawing heart, hope, and strength from my experience of taking part in workshops, trainings, and protests at the local level. Organized, for example, by immigrant rights organizations such as Siembra, North Carolina, that fights against ICE, abusive employers and landlords, and the criminalization of the Latinx community in this state. I draw heart, hope, and strength from the work of artists, writers, cultural workers, librarians, spiritual leaders, local historians, and activists here in Durham, North Carolina, who are working to raise money and protect the local organizations not dependent on federal funds. We are working to support endangered community organizations. We're working to protect local community historical and cultural centers and keep creating theater pieces, music, festive gatherings that nurture and nourish our bodies, spirits, and hearts. And I draw heart, hope, and strength from the tenacious and powerful organizing that's happening in other cities by activists, at least half my age, maybe. Like Dessa Cosmo, who started Detroit Disability Power in Detroit, Michigan, and for the long haul work they are doing, and the fact that I draw heart and hope from the fact that they have a number of recently won victories in that city, accessible, as they're working on accessible, affordable housing, accessible voting, and a newly established Office for Disability Rights in City Hall. That too is happening, I say to myself. I draw hope from the fact that the people who have structural power are weak spiritually and in a lot of other ways. Like, I hold this grief about what the damage they're doing, but in another sense, I know they cannot erase. They do not have the power to erase the history that has been made and the stories that will be protected, So I draw heart and hope from places like this and from the people who are creating, nurturing, nourishing spaces where we can grieve and rage and lament, but also the daily defeats, that we can lament those daily defeats, but also where we can sing and dance and rejoice at even the tiniest victories. Every morning, I try to find the strength to get up in my 76th year and face another day of carrying on. And I choose hope. I choose it as a spiritual discipline because I'm not going to let them steal my joy or my hope.
Thank you, Melanie. Roberto, Could you go next, please?
All right, folks, you're getting me there. Hope. So what is it again? I hold up this candle as a sign of hope for democracy in the United States. So one of the things I do every morning is I sit by my ancestors' altar, my racial justice ancestors' altar, and I give gratitude for all the blessings that I have and that we all have. And I try to remember and recreate and re-choose those each moment. It's a struggle. Sometimes I want to, and so much to be grateful for. I'm grateful for you, my dear beloved brother Robin, for wearing your orange yellow shirt, and for the compassion and the ancestors you just talked about, and Jorge, for your courage and bravery and folks offering this, and all of it, each of us gathered here for this. This gives me more hope, like we've been saying. Today, today's t-shirt I'm wearing is Veterans for Black Lives, and it says Black Lives Matter and Veterans for Peace. Peace. I have hope for peace and love, because love is by far the greatest power in the universe. No doubt about that. So that's what I choose to put my, this group is people who want to stop the insanity of war, because we've been through it. We don't need that anymore. And today I was with two, and what you said, who said it? Oh, Dale, about men, looking in the eyes of men. That's what I try to do each day. I try to seek out other men and touch their hearts with love, even if they have a different perspective, let's just say, putting it nicely, which is a challenge, but it's such a good one. Because I find that men, we want opportunities to be the gentler, kinder parts of ourselves. So, and today, there's this young man that I just met when I circle the lake when I'm hanging out with my departed beloved one, and who we've started talking these last couple of weeks. He was born in a Cambodian refugee camp. He's raising his children to speak out, to be courageous and loving, to demand to speak their own truth, demand to know the truth about this country, the white supremacy truth, wealthy white heterosexual male, cultural values, supremacy, cultural truth, needs to be spoken over and over again, because that's the truth. And as James Baldwin said, we can't change what we don't acknowledge. Over and over again, not as blaming and guilt tripping, just because of the pure fact. If we don't acknowledge it, how the hell are we gonna heal it? So, and then I met one of my clients who just called me, to no coincidence. He's hurting big time, really in the darkest place in his life, but we can certainly relate to that. And over brokenheartedness and love not being the way we were hoping, but also being grateful for that moment of love and moments of love. And he's a relative of General George Armstrong Custer. Can you say white supremacy? Can you say, massacring indigenous ones? Although he got his comeuppance, didn't he? So Custer, Hitler, he who will go and mention, begins with T. King, lives inside me. And if I can honor that, keep honoring that, that potential's inside of me and all of us, I believe, then I can also have compassion and have trust that our children, the young people, will keep rising up, demanding that the truth of the white people, the white guys in power, quote, power with a small p, will speak the truth and maybe ask for forgiveness, and make sure from vetting the people who've been so oppressed to make sure that we make things right and that it's sustainable, not just little token temporary fixes. So I have hope that that's definitely possible. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberto. Pam, would you go next, please?
I hold up this candle as a sign of hope for democracy in the United States. My hope is that the resiliency of people will propel them to continue the good fight, and I'm hopeful that the persistency of the good social protests, the social justice organizations and movement, and the people who stand for equality for all, that will help sustain us wherever we are in this country. I feel hope because I know love and I have faith. And I have to have hope so that my nieces and nephews will know and see hope. Not just in me, but in their grandmother, their 92-year-old grandmother, my mother, a woman who is a living, feisty Southern Black woman born in the segregated South, but has perseverance and hope. And I want to be able to have that kind of perseverance as I age. I also want my ancestors to be able to rest in peace. Melanie said it too. My mother, every day when we were growing up, and still to this day, and I'll be 65 in October, baby, don't let anyone steal your joy. So my love and faith and kindness that I know that abounds in my life, and the joy and hopefulness that my mother has instilled in us will sustain me as we continue to fight the good fight. I'm hopeful for all good things. Even in the dark times, we have to have hope.
Thank you, Pam. Joyce, would you go next, please?
I hold up this candle as a sign of hope for our democracy in the United States. Humanity, people, us, we're the hope. We're the hope. If we're hopeless, then who are we going to lean on? We have to lean on each other. We have to lean on, all the good work that Melanie is doing down there in North Carolina and Alabama. We need that. We need each other. So my hope is in humanity. Those of us online who know me, I will start a conversation with absolutely anyone, especially if they don't look like me. And today I had a conversation with a woman who was reading my t-shirt. Oh, you guys can't really see it. Okay, all my names. Martin Luther King, Harriet Tubman. And I said, hey, how many of these people do you know? So, and then we just had a heartfelt conversation. And my question to her was, we have laws, because you're saying we're talking about the civil rights movement and the laws, and now we're going backwards. Yes. But how do we begin to change hearts? How do we begin to change the hearts of everyday Americans? We have to start in conversation and make a connection. So it's important that we look at each other and we see each other's humanity. That's a beginning. And we cannot, I absolutely refuse to go backwards. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and this young woman was talking about African enslaved women would go far into the forest or in the woods, and they would just dance, playing drums and just dance. And Pamela said it, can't let nobody take your joy. I can't even imagine having to live with the fear of possibly being raped and then having to go to work in the field. And yet these women did that because we're here. I'm here. So in honor of them, I have to hope, because I'm still living and working for them. So that's our responsibility. So we have to remain hopeful. So I have hope in humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Sylvia, would you go next, please?
Sure. I hold this candle as a sign of hope for democracy in the United States. What gives me hope? Farm worker justice gives me hope. What is farm worker justice? Farm worker justice is fair wages, safe, dignified living and working conditions for farm workers and their families. Farm worker justice is farm worker youth who, even when they have been given little, they give the society so much. Farm worker justice is children who have worked in the field, dairy farms, or protein processing plants, going on to higher education and spending the summer in their college years to advocate for current farm workers in North and South Carolina through our flagship internship program, Into the Fields. That's 33 years of youth leadership. Farm worker justice is achieving protections one day against damage caused by pesticides and lack of PPE or training given to them by growers. Farm worker justice is dignified housing for farm workers, free of mold, free of outhouses, full of light, cooled by AC, and built to protect individuals' right to privacy, and buildings that keep sustainability at the core of their construction. Farm worker justice is farm workers having access to clean water when they need to drink water, working out in the fields and shade. Farm worker justice is camp alumni who have graduated from college and have returned to lead camp programs or have stepped up to the call of leadership in their respective careers. They find the time and energy to give back to students who are sitting in seats we once sat in. Farm worker justice is environmental justice for farm worker communities. Farm worker justice is unbridled joy of farm workers and their families as they create art, music, document the stories to share with the world. Farm worker justice has taught me risk is always present and fear is never a reason to back down from the fight for what is right. Farm worker justice is successful boycotts that brought better wages and living conditions to farm workers. Farm worker justice gives me hope because I have lived it as a migrant kid. This migrant farm worker kid now has 2 wonderful teenagers of my own who can stand on my shoulders with access to information and ways to fight for justice at their fingertips, and wisdom that is certainly an accumulation of our ancestors. I have hope because I am. Against all odds, I'm here representing both sides of my family who originate from Nuevo León, Mexico, with multi-generational agrarian roots. I have hope because farm worker justice knows that we will fight hasta la victoria, till victory.
Thank you, Sylvia. Jorge, would you go next, please?
Sure. I hold up this candle as a sign of hope for democracy in the United States. And one of the reasons why I have hope in the midst of all this craziness is the fact that, and it may sound a little contradictory, but I believe this is true. The reason why there's such a violent pushback against our work is because we were winning. We were actually really making a difference. That's why there's such a huge pushback. So the fact is, yes, for a moment, we have lost the levers of power and they're coming at us in all kinds of ways. So it feels like everything's lost, but it's not. The foundation is there. We will pick it up when this nonsense is over. But I think we need to orient ourselves to this moment from a place of strength, not a place of weakness. So the place of strength gives us hope if we understand that the fact that they're coming at us so hard is because we were winning. Because of the work that I do, have the privilege of being in conversations with hundreds of people across the United States, where people are coming hungry for greater understanding, hungry for a sense of community, hungry for a sense of justice, hungry for a way of contributing to a better world, not a destructive world like these folks are trying to build. So that gives me hope, and that may go unnoticed if we only pay attention to the national news, and that almost by design that is meant to create a sense of hopelessness. So there are stories that are happening. Melanie, the work that you're doing, Abby, the work that you're doing, Pam, the work that you're doing, Sylvia, what can I say? Beth, the work that I know you've been doing for a long time, Roberto, Joyce, Dale, and my partner, friend, Robin. You know, this work we've been doing for a long time, and we're going to keep doing it. Right? So that gives me hope. I actually firmly believe that we are actually the majority. And one of the signs that gives me a sense that that is actually true is how this current administration is actually trying to prevent folks from voting. It's trying to create voting districts that gives them more power, and they can only achieve that by gerrymandering districts, not by simply allowing people to vote their conscience. Because they know they will lose if people have access to vote, right? So, again, in the midst of all of this, and it feels overwhelming, and it feels sometimes like it's like they are winning, I need to constantly remind myself that there are also signs in all of this. You know, I forget who was it. I think, Melanie, you're the one that says they don't have the spiritual power. They don't. They are devoid of any spirituality, as a matter of fact. They're empty vessels when it comes to spirituality. So that doesn't have lasting power. There's no way that can carry over a long period of time. That'll fizzle out. That'll burn out in a minute. So we just have to stand strong and continue to see ourselves the way we're seeing each other in this space. So hope comes from being able to be with other human beings like you in this conversation. Thank you all for being here tonight.
Thank you, Jorge. And I'd like to thank all of you for being part of this Vigil for Democracy. I wonder if you'd join me one last time as we conclude our ritual to blow out our candles. Thank you, and take care.